Amanda Alms, our assistant director. So they'll all be here as long as you want to be here tonight and answer questions and give us some feedback. This is, as we're just saying, we've had a couple of meetings so far. We intend to have a few more leading up to the adoption of a master plan for redevelopment of Rose Park later this year, and then we'll get into construction documents. So we'll walk you through that process. So we're going to go ahead and share most of the slides that we had in our first public meeting from first week in July, but we really want to get some feedback directly about the playground and inclusive play structures and amenities tonight to kind of help us zero in on those features. Just a little bit, this is our department. Our vision is to inspire Mansfield to gather, grow, preserve, and play through welcoming spaces and remarkable experiences. Our agenda for tonight will give a little bit of project background on Rose Park itself and this project and how we got to this point. Talk about some of the existing conditions and constraints that we unfortunately have to deal with the park. Again, look at adaptive and inclusive playground options and considerations, and then biggest goal is for us to get feedback from you to help us try to shape this project moving forward. Little history about the project. Katherine Rose Memorial Park was originally owned by Conway and Katherine Rose, and they used it as their kind of private weekend ranch. Rose Park officially opened in 1996 as the first park that was developed using the half-cent sales tax that was approved by voters in 1992. It does provide a connection to Town Park and the McKnight Parks with the linear park running through Rose Park. That was added in 2007. And the current playground that's there today was replaced, the original one, in 2010. So it's about 12 years old right now. The typical average life of a playground is 15 years. That's your standard. In an environment like this where the park floods, that takes away life, and the bigger, more used playgrounds typically don't make 15 years, but we're kind of right in line. We're probably gonna be at the 13, 14 year range before we replace it. So overall, it's performing well. A little bit also, the Rose Park Playground, we completed a master plan in 2020 for our overall park system. And Rose Park Playground was the #1 project priority that came out of that plan for this quadrant of the city. So clearly, all residents, they love the park, and it was identified as a priority to improve and replace and keep that sentiment going. Following that master plan adoption in 2021, the council allocated $1.5 million towards this project, towards the playground project. So we have started the master plan process to create an overall plan, and you'll see some of that tonight. That's what's being proposed. We'd be interested in your feedback. And you'll see that it also includes the Hardy Alderman Soccer Complex, which is across Walnut Creek Drive. That is currently primarily practice space for our soccer associations, but you'll see a bigger footprint other than just Rose Park. So this proposed project, again, was to replace the playground, highlighted in that yellow polygon, and you see kind of a bird's eye view of the park. If you've been there, you're familiar with that. But we really wanted to create a signature playground. We wanted something special that Mansfield currently doesn't have, not just your typical community or neighborhood park playground. But we wanted to reinforce that family favorite experience. We've heard, especially over the last few years through all of our public engagement, people's, I used to go there as a kid, now I take my kids there, I take my grandkids there, and people love Rose Park. So we want to reinforce that experience that people have had for the last 25 plus years. We want to try to make this playground unique to Mansfield. We want to make sure it's designed for all abilities. There are some minor park improvements that need to happen in conjunction with the playground improvements. And then we want to take advantage of this opportunity and look at alternative site plans. And what if we put it over here or moved it around, especially considering some of the constraints and issues that we deal with. So just quickly, some of the existing conditions. This is the current playground. It is a barrier-free playground. It was designed that way, which is why we have a lot of ramps. We heard in the first public meeting, a lot of people, while they liked the fact that when we did this in 2010, it was barrier-free, so wheelchairs and devices could get throughout it, the footprint that it takes up limited the amount of actual play equipment that you have. And so they'd like to make sure that it's accessible and barrier-free, but add more play equipment as well. And so you can kind of see that's the way it looks right now. Other amenities in the park, sand volleyball courts, basketball courts. We have a lot of fitness that takes place in the park. Obviously with the loop trail and the linear trail, a lot of walkers and joggers, but we have some fitness equipment around our trail, and a lot of groups take advantage for group fitness and mom and me and stroller groups and boot camps and those kind of things. So it's a popular destination for that. And then we have multiple pavilions and then the one set of restrooms. So those are your primary amenities. We have our pond and some other things that take place in the park too. Some of the more frequent issues and concerns that we're aware of, that we hear from residents all the time: not enough parking, especially during peak periods, lack of park lighting. So we've heard from a lot of people that said, I don't feel comfortable allowing my child to go over to the restroom by themselves, even though I'm at the playground, because it's just not well lit. And you do have teens and young adults out there and a lot of activity, and so that's a concern that we want to pay attention to. Again, 25 plus years, the infrastructure is aging, and so we need to make sure we're renovating and rehabilitating so that it doesn't get into a state of disrepair. Not enough sport courts, not enough playground equipment, and then the park is prone to flooding. You've probably seen this if you've lived here a while. This is what happens. The water, actually right now, it may not, as long as it's not too raging, it may not mind a little bit of overflow, because the last rain we got, I think, really was that flash flood that Friday evening a couple of months ago. It doesn't seem like it was too recent, but that's what happens. Water comes and inundates the park. And for the playground specifically, this is what you see. That water with this poured in place comes, and it helps to, as it dries out, those cracks start showing up much more frequently than in a typical poured in place in a high and dry park. And so what happens, and so you may know, you may not, but all these little circles all throughout that, those are patches over time. Those aren't a design feature, but those are cracks that we've had to replace over time. So that's just a unique challenge that we have to deal with when a park like this is in the floodplain. And so hopefully we can address some of that through some redesign in a new park. So this is why it floods. The entire park is in the 100-year floodplain. That's the light blue section. The dark blue is the FEMA floodway, which means you can't do any structures that water can't pass through. So it's very limiting. We only have this small area here within Rose. It's outside the 100-year floodplain, which is why the restroom building is right there, because you can't put that structure in the floodway. You can put pavilions or something that water is allowed to pass through. You can't do chain link fence in the floodway, because with debris from the creek overtops the banks, comes in and flows and brings debris, creates a dam, and then potentially floods homes and businesses upstream. So those are some challenges. And then we have this small little high and dry area over here on the Hardy Allman complex that we can deal with. So that's why the park floods. That's just the nature of it. A lot of parks are built along creeks and floodways. It's better than homes, and so we have actually purchased a few homes here and down the street, McKnight Park West, that are prone to flooding, and because they were built before we had a lot of data, 30, 40, 50 years ago. So, okay, so, and then when we take away those layers, you kind of see the floodway lines as the dark blue and the floodplain, so you can just kind of see the heart of the park and all these areas that we're talking about today, unfortunately lie right along Walnut Creek. Okay, so over the last few years, we've had several processes where we've gained some public input and feedback, and the high need, high demand amenities that came out of that, starting with our 2020 master plan, was adopted by council in October of 2020. We had lots of surveys. Jessica was involved in a lot of those as well, focus groups, public meetings. In 2021, we had a feasibility study geared at an indoor recreation center / library, but anytime you ask for the public's input, it's not just about, even though you're asking about a rec center, people still say, we want tennis courts, we want whatever. So we document all of that as well. So through that process, we got a lot of park feedback, even though we were talking about an indoor facility, but we gathered some themes that came out of those two processes. And we do a lot of email alerts, and that's one of the reasons. If you signed in, we'll add you to that. Make sure you get updates on this project as we go forward. So for this project, we had an online survey for a few weeks in June through July. We had our first public meeting on July 7th. In this meeting, I think we had 27 people, so pretty good turnout that night. Outreach events, we've had a couple of pop-up events at Rose Park. We had a session just with our summer day camp, so we had 48 kids or so in that, so we went straight to the kids. They went to the park one day, and then the next day, that was their assignment, is you go play and then come back and tell us what was good, what was bad, what would you change, what would you add, kind of thing, so getting the youth perspective. And then we've had a couple other input gathering sessions with some families, specifically at other parks and around the Metroplex, getting some ideas. Okay, so some of the play amenities, these are from the public meeting. Obviously slides and swings, those are standard amenities that you would have. We've asked the public's input of, do Do you want towers? Do you want tall structures? We don't really have a lot of that in our park system, but it is common in today's playgrounds. Climbing apparatus, whether they're kind of climbing walls or the net components, musical sound, sensory amenities, you know, little kind of areas where you can play like in a clubhouse or for kind of activities, spinners, rockers. You can see the bottom picture here has a different kind of surface to it, more of a synthetic turf. And then we've heard, so you'll see in the concept here in a minute, one of the things that we're looking at is we have a lot of amenities that are kind of jammed in close together, and we hear a lot of concerns about the sand volleyball and basketball, which are primarily teen and adult activities. Sometimes some of the language and other things that take place in that being so close to the playground, so could we kind of separate those and move those out? So you'll see in the concept in a minute, we're looking at the idea of moving those courts across the street and giving us a bigger footprint here. We heard from some families in our first meeting about the basketball. Said, well, when we go play on the playground, we also like to shoot some hoops. And so we had kind of threw this out there to them at that meeting, the idea of incorporating a basketball activity within the playground that's not the court where, again, the adults and then the teens like to run full court games, but that's not what they were wanting. They just wanted the idea of shooting hoops and kind of thing. So amenities like this could be incorporated with the playground to still give that component to that. So that's one of the concepts we're looking at. And then we have the basketball and sand volleyball in the top pictures. The bottom pictures are other areas. We have 3 public tennis courts in the entire park system, so we're way behind on our standards. We know we need more, and so we're looking at this park as a potential area to add them. And then the bottom right is pickleball. We have 0 public pickleball courts outdoor. We do have the MAC and then the field house where we have some indoor opportunities among all the other uses that we jumble, but we don't have any outdoor, so we'd like to be able to introduce some outdoor pickleball courts. And then in the future, we'd also like to look at the idea of adding a splash pad. Because this is one of the family favorite parks in Mansfield, and everybody loves splash pads, you know, could we program that into a future phase as well? Okay, so the draft concept, we'll go through this quickly before we focus on the playground. Some of the goals of this project are, first and foremost, we want to preserve the beauty and history of the park. We're not planning on taking out any of the big, gorgeous pecan trees that everybody's concerned about that. No plans for that at all. We want to preserve everything that we possibly can there. We want to, again, create a unique signature playground that's inclusive and adaptive. We want to add some high demand park amenities that we just talked about, like splash pads and sport courts that we're deficient in our park system. We want to try to maximize that layout. So again, looking at the constraints of the floodplain and the floodway, if we moved amenities around, you know, how could we make the most out of our usable space around those limitations, and doing that in an overall master plan that we could phase with improvements over the next few years. So this is the overall area. So in addition to the roughly 30 acres of Katherine Rose Park, we're also looking at the 9 or so acres across the street at Hardy Allman. Some people in the first meeting didn't realize that our trail, you can actually connect and access this underneath the bridge. They had no idea that the trail actually went back and you get on the linear trail and go down to the McKnight Parks and keep on going. Very soon it'll get you all the way to Olive Nature Park and all the way to 360. We got one small gap in the middle there. And then last year the city purchased 10 acres at the end of Smith Street that was floodway. We really purchased it for water and sewer easements that run through that. But because it's a similar nature, you go back and look at the other map, it's all in the floodplain too, so you can't do anything with it, can't build on it. But it does align along our linear trail, and Town Park is just on the north side of that. So this fits in well. So in total, we have roughly 50 acres that we're looking at is how can we reprogram this? So the first idea of the concept would be to move our practice soccer fields into that new 10 acres that we purchased off Smith Street. So they're just practice fields, they're not game fields, and so utilizing that area, adding some parking, and try to activate that space. If we're able to do that, if you remember from one of those earlier pictures, this is the only high and dry area of all of this land anywhere on there. So if we moved our basketball and sand volleyball courts over to this area and added more courts to the limited number that we have, and then also try to incorporate some tennis and pickleball courts. So we'd have all of our kind of our adult kind of court activities on this side of the road, again with dedicated parking on that side. And then on the other field, because fitness is so important, we'd like to kind of create a fitness space here, whether that's equipment or little plazas or pavilions where all of our boot camps and groups that like to get together. So they have a space that is dedicated and kind of, again, removes that so you don't have the conflict between kids running around the playground and kind of opens that up. We'd like to reconfigure and expand the parking. So we know we're limited in this parking. We'd like to incorporate some of this area that's unused right now and add it and move this further back so it gets you a little bit closer. Where a lot of people like to go to the pond, so we'd have parking that's a little bit closer to the back of the park as well. And again, expand the number of spaces that we have. By doing that, we would free up some space and to create this playground. So you can see our footprint for our playground is about that big. So a much larger signature playground in the middle of the park. Again, more high and dry, away from the flooding zone. And then in the future, it would allow some space for a splash pad potentially. And then you still have lots of areas in and around there. So when we add in new restrooms or pavilions, potentially on both sides of the park, putting those really, really close to those amenities and kind of spreading out those proposed uses. And then when you look at, the overall plan, so all the little polygons out there, we also have, you can see additional trails. The dash lines would be additional trails to what's currently there, including activating the space on the other side. Is probably a trailhead, just so the residents on the north side of the neighborhood could access the park and the linear trail in the future. So as we move later on, we would like your feedback on the concept as well, and if that makes sense to you, any concerns with that, we'd like to hear that. But we do want to focus on the playground tonight. So when we talk about signature playground, what does that mean? Typically, you have some very unique features, so not your standard small little neighborhood park playground. You start to incorporate some custom interactive experience, something that may be unexpected or surprising, something that's different than just a regular slide and a couple of swings. Something that is more of a photo-friendly look, so something that's unique here, optimized for multiple ages and interests. Something special, again, invokes that community pride that everybody loves Rose Park, so let's make it special for generations to come. And then you also have the opportunity, a lot of these are gonna have a distinctive overall theme or style or design thread to them. Some of the ones you may be familiar with in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, River Legacy Park on the north side of Arlington has a very nature oriented theme. Playground Adventures in Grand Prairie just opened a few years ago. Couple $1 million playground, very nice. Dream Park in Fort Worth, that top picture on the left there is from Dream. The bottom one is Playground in Grand Prairie. Dream Park's about $4.5 million. We're not talking about the same scale and scope as those, but incorporating some of the components and the amenities that you find in some of these. And then Bicentennial Park in Southlake, again, very theme driven with their red brick, wrought iron, and they have some dinosaurs and some other dragons. I'm sorry, dragons. There's stuff like dragons. So again, some of those features, one of the opportunities for aesthetics is kind of theming it. You can see some examples of the natural. The two on the right are River Legacy and Arlington. So big tree trunks, a lot of critters. They have a history of dinosaur remains found in River Legacy. So I actually worked there at the time we did this, and that's why that was incorporated. Another option, some of these are from Playground in Grand Prairie, some more modern look. The first public meeting, we had a lot of interest in having something look like this, very vibrant colors. And modern looking. You have more of the whimsical look and very colorful and bright and imaginative features to it. And then for other themed opportunities like the farm theme or maybe the nature in the trees or a pirate ship. So there's all kinds of opportunities. So that's another one of the things that we're going to ask for your feedback tonight is, do you think we should theme it? And if so, what kind of theme should we consider? All right, so finally, we're gonna run through a series of these on the inclusive and adaptive. This is the biggest piece of feedback we'd like to get from you tonight. What features do we need to include that you don't find a lot in your traditional small little neighborhood parks, playgrounds? So what kind of swings? You have your accompanying swings, instead of your traditional belt swing, you kind of have more of the buckets here, and then the ones with the straps over for babies and toddlers. You have your companion swings. You even have one that's more of on a zip line. So those kind of things. So what are the swing components and amenities that you'd like to see other than your standard little belt swing? On swings also for wheelchairs. So there's lots of different types. The one on the right I think is Playground in Grand Prairie, so that's your kind of your flat metal where the wheelchair can slide up, roll on, and you kind of sway back and forth. You have more on the bottom left is more of the kind of the cage component where the entire thing swings, and then on the top left is more of a companion, so you can have a wheelchair and another sibling or a parent or something joining it. So are wheelchair swings important? And if so, is there one of these styles that you prefer that we would need to consider? Some of the interactive play, so net climbers and things where even if you're in an assistive device or wheelchair, you can reach, you can pull up, you can play with bars that roll around. You have some kind of climbing features on a little hill that doubles up as a tunnel. So are there interactive play components that are important and some that make sense? I don't know if we really covered it on the other slide. This is one of the largest roller slides you'll probably ever see. Traditionally they're smaller, but this one's all the way down the hill. So roller slides are cool because they do allow children with special needs on there, but most people don't even understand that's the intent. And so you get that inclusive play going with people not even realizing that you introduced this for a specific reason. I don't know if okay, there it is. There's a different view. This is a different, smaller roller slide, but one on a smaller hill. And then you also have the flat table. So any child can get on and then pull themselves through with the bars, kind of like a lay down version of monkey bars, Some of the spinning slides, so unfortunately in our day, the merry-go-rounds don't exist like that anymore. For safety purposes, we have hot metal on asphalt and we're still here, but it doesn't happen anymore. So there's different versions today, so if spinning play is important, we'd like to hear from you on that. And if there's a particular style, you've got a couple that actually allow a wheelchair to be on the device. They are somewhat challenging from operations and maintenance, but they are options. You got more ones that are flat to the ground. This one is more where the kids actually use their own muscle to make it spin and get going. But it's a pretty big device. And then you've got the landscape structures and the ones that don't allow a wheelchair to roll on, but a child can be assisted into that and spin around, or likewise sit and hold on to the bar. So a couple of different variations. So if that kind of a spinning device is important, today's version of a merry-go-round, then please let us know. And if one of these styles suits you better, or your experience tells us if you've used one. So they're kind of the rockers and the bouncers. Again, today's version of teeter-totters. You got the Sway Fun. It's more of a ship that does allow wheelchairs and assistive devices to actually enter, and it's kind of like a boat. That's why it's called Sway Fun. So it rocks back and forth. You got this kind of a teeter-totter where people can sit both ways and rock back and forth with the springers, and then a couple of different kinds of companion where multiple kids and or parents can use at one time. A lot of sensory play, so obviously we have some musical, I don't know if we have one on here. Those may be musical devices, but musical devices, things that make noise and sound, braille opportunities on not just play equipment, but just the signage throughout the park and the play panels and things like that, I think are a given. So enforce that if you believe that, but that's our thought, is we want to incorporate as much of that as possible. Our maintenance staff hate this, but anything with soil that gets water and everything else, but it is part of the play component. I know parents love for kids to get all muddy and then get in your car too, but play tables like that with sand and soil are an option for sensory play. And then levels and surfaces. So I know some of the feedback we've already received from some of our participants and residents have been about, a lot of times in order to make a playground completely barrier-free and accessible, you have to stay within ADA, and so your ramps and the routes and everything are important. And so sometimes components can be built into hills that make it accessible that way. Other times they just create hills for maybe no reason. And so some of the feedback we've already heard is that's a problem for people on devices, or that may be visually impaired, that are trying to just go from this side of the playground to that side, and why is there a hill in the middle of it? When I can't play that way. So that's important feedback. That's the reason we're doing all these meetings and trying to listen, because this particular one, I won't mention which one, has a lot of that stuff in between. So if you have a child that wants to here to there, they don't anticipate that there's gonna be a hill there. If there's no reason for it, then don't design it that way. So that's just something to consider. And then, some of these structures, again, going from this play structure to this one causes you to go all the way around and sometimes there's a legitimate reason for that. But if there's not, then make sure you pay attention to that with design. So those are some of the features. And then on the surfaces, you see a couple different kinds. Synthetic turf here, poured in place here. Obviously, walkways need to be concrete. There's steps here. So if you have thoughts about a particular surface, we're not going to do wood chips, we're not going to do pea gravel, but even though they meet standards for accessibility, we're not going to. We don't even do that today in any of our parks. But if there's a particular surface that you like, we've also heard some feedback from some of our participants in our sessions already about having too many variations in surfaces, going from a poured in place to a concrete to the synthetic turf, and that is a challenge for some of our kids. And so trying to be more consistent throughout your play structure. So we're interested in if you have thoughts about the type of surfaces that you would like to see that you've experienced or your children have experienced in public playgrounds. And musical instruments. So we'll have an exercise here in a minute that gives you some opportunity to give some dots on, if you had to prioritize, are we doing top 4, Ann?
Yeah.
Top 4. If you had to pick 4, what are the 4 most important? I think we'll probably have a variation of all of this, but if you had to pick 4, what are the most important? Are musical instruments more important than slides or swings or, so give us that kind of feedback. And if there are, we have Post-it notes too. So if there are specific components, specific type of slide, a specific type of swing or surface or musical instrument or sensory element, please give us that comment. Just write it on a Post-it note, stick it on the board as well. Okay, so this project, the timeline, so we kicked this master plan process off in May, as we talked about, a couple of meetings already, online survey, so we've got a lot of data we've given to our consultant that is working on this for the design component. The plan, again, we intend to have some more engagement over the next couple months and hope to have a master plan completed by October, and then we'll start phase 1 construction documents. So that's where, after we have all this input, we'll decide, all right, the playground, this is where it's gonna go, start doing the construction documents. That'll take the winter into the spring, do our bidding and our contract award, and about this time next year is when construction would start. So it's a long process for a big project like this. And probably, I think we've got 6 to 9 months on there because someone asked in the first public meeting, are you gonna close the park for this? And that is not our intent. So we'll work around that. And so that's difficult to keep the park open, so it adds a little bit of time, but we have hundreds of people that use the park every single day. So we wanna make sure people still have access to the trails and all the other amenities while we're doing construction, if at all possible. It's gonna pinch a little bit, just like road construction, it is. That's the only way you get progress is to do that. Or you shut it down and no one can use it. We don't wanna do that. So that would be the goal, is probably early 2024 for opening. So tonight, we have staff here. We'll be here as long as you like, answer as many questions, take your feedback. We wanna know, the things you wanna see in the park. If there are things that you don't want, don't do this, don't include this doesn't work, I don't like this. We wanna hear that as well. And then we've got some exercises. We want some dots on the favorite amenities. So 4 dots to pick on the most, your highest priorities. On the themes, if you think we should have a theme, there's a board. Oh, my glasses on. I wonder where our theme board's at. Which side's it on, Ann? Over here?
Yep.
Second one, yeah. So if you think we should have a theme, that's these 4 right here. So if you want a theme, tell us which one makes more sense. And then the redevelopment plan. So does the concept we talked about moving the courts, expanding the footprint, adding more parking, and potentially a splash pad in the future, does that concept make sense? Do you like that idea? Or if you don't, tell us why, and maybe we can meet in the middle and find a way to make it all happen. James Fish is our senior park planner. He's the project manager of this. It's really co-managed between he and Chris, but he's the one who gets his phone number and email address up here. So if you have follow-up comments after this, again, Anna will add, if you signed in, she'll add you to the project updates. So as we have the next round of meetings, or we have a new concept that comes out of this that our consultant derives, then we'll make sure that you get the email. And of course, all of this we keep on our website. So even these presentations we put on the website. So before we break out and let you play around and add comments, we'll just open it up. Questions or comments right now? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we're gonna have a splash park, most likely for the kids, which they'll love, right? Okay, the only thing, and it's very rare, but Dallas has had issues with that brain-eating amoeba coming through their splash parks and actually, unfortunately killing children. But what are we gonna do to prevent that from happening on this splash park? Because it's rare, but it can happen, and it has happened in Dallas several times over the years.
Yeah, so our current splash pad and we have two more that are under construction right now. So by next spring, we'll have 3 splash pads in our system. Are all done on a recirculating system. So they get treated just like a regular pool does. They meet all the requirements. We have 6 certified pool operators on staff to manage those. And we might even have more in the future. So they get tested 3 times a day. We have technology on it, and it's a little bit of a pain sometimes when the chemicals get out of whack. If you've been to Chandler Park, it will shut down immediately and won't allow anybody to use it. Even when there's not a serious problem, if the reading gets out of line, it will shut down, and then staff get alerted if we're not already in the park and come out there. So chemical levels are treated just like a pool. We do have a health department now in the city, started this last year, and so we don't rely on Tarrant County anymore for inspections. In the past, we just would get inspected one time at the beginning of the season and we're done. How many times they've been out this year? A dozen maybe? Yeah, so they're out there as well. We work closely with our water department on our backflow devices, on everything to make sure. So we have multiple layers in the works to ensure that water quality.
Did Dallas just fail to do that, or they said on the news that they're doing some special additions now to the splash parks to make them safe?
Yeah,
do you know what they are?
It was another city where the child died very close to us. I'll just say that. I don't want to throw them under the bus.
Yeah,
but yeah, so they failed to check their chemicals for 100 days.
Oh, Lordy.
Yeah, we check them 3 times a day, and that was their failing, is that they just didn't even check it. So there was no way to prove that the amoeba actually, but when they did test it, the amoeba was present in that splash pad. So there was no way to prove that actually did it. But when you don't test your water for 100 days, they owned it and admitted.
Yeah.
Well,
it's too late.
Yeah,
but,
yeah. So they since then have implemented every bit of the technology, I think, that we already have in place.
Well, they can also live in right now, especially in our ponds and in our Walnut Creek has no water right now.
Yeah.
But they can also, those amoebas can be in our ponds and stuff as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's good. That I didn't know we had a health department down here.
We did, yes. So they're actually inspecting all restaurants, pools, and multifamily units. Yeah. So instead of
did y'all do the happy dance?
I guess, yeah. So we have a lot more quick response on things. Tarrant County, especially on the splash pad and our concession stands in our parks, they were always great to work with. But again, we only get tested once a year. Now they're available anytime. They're coming to our special events. Our staff are now present at our special events. They're checking food quality. Yeah. So
that's great.
Yeah.
And then, did you ever think about putting there's no flowers. I don't know why I think of Rose Park as roses. I know we can't have thorns. But can we have a wildflower area? Did y'all ever think about putting flowers anywhere? There's nothing in any of the parks.
Yeah, we have wildflowers at Oliver Nature Park. We have a big wildflower meadow there. We do have, if I can get this thing to back up a little bit, we do have a wildflower meadow on the backside of Rose Park on the way towards Town Park. My goodness, come on. Try to point it out here. Okay, yeah, so this is a wildflower meadow here.
Okay.
Yeah. So we certainly could, and there's some areas that probably could be incorporated over here. We could do some in the middle. It is a little bit more difficult with the floods that we get because they will inundate it, and it's a different kind of challenge to it. But
I might wash them somewhere else.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But okay, yeah, it's good feedback.
With it right here, instead of putting some of the pickleball court and tennis court up top where it's completely dry, have we thought about just moving that entire park into that area? Is it too small? Is it and then moving the courts into kind of that floodplain?
Oh, moving the playground the other side. So some of the feedback we heard from the first side, we could. You don't have all the big shade trees on that side. And so that's one of the things we heard from the first meeting is they wanted us close to all that, those big gorgeous trees. You'd have a row of trees here that basically sprung up from drainage over time. And so it would kind of all be exposed to the sun and the heat. So we certainly could. The courts can flood just like anything else, as long as I take it back. You couldn't put tennis courts. You could do basketball, sand volleyball, but you couldn't do pickleball or tennis because the fences wouldn't be allowed in the floodway.
So that was the one thing that I feel like as a special needs parent, and I've heard this over and over and over, is fencing. Fencing is huge for our community of special needs community. Like, we just have a lot of people who just are kind of impulsive and run, and my child included. He wouldn't run away now, but I was always like, where's one where I can watch him fully? And
Yeah.
Rose Park is not one of the ones that I would tend to go to because it was so open. And I think one of the best things that Grand Play did is they have this huge fencing around the entire park.
Yeah.
And then they have like little kind of fences around each area. And so I think that was probably the number one thing that I think our special needs community really was like, get fencing so that we can feel comfortable just being there instead of being like, because over there, it's right next to the road, so it's
Right.
it's a short thing. So
And we'll
is that
clarify.
something?
The fencing is possible as long as the water is allowed to flow through and it doesn't become a blockage or a dam. So some fencing types, there are options for barriers and fencing, yes. The chain link is not one because the fabric itself with the small holes, it doesn't take long for the debris to create a dam. But as long as the water can flow through, we work with our engineering department. That's the other reason why we wanted to move it here, because you can do some fencing in the floodplain, you just can't do it in the floodway. So if we're able to pull that playground further out, further away from the creek, you could do more of those barriers and fences, so.
Have y'all thought about that as a real part of the concept, or is it?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
The other thing also, and you might be able to speak to this more, what I've heard from especially kids with like older kids who have wheelchairs is that sometimes that it's always separate. Like the wheelchair, the things that do have wheelchairs, some are kind of separate and off to the side. Even Grand Play, which you said Callie really liked it, but
She liked it, but it was completely off by itself,
Yeah.
and it was gated in, and so like all her friends are all over here, and she's over here by herself in the wheelchair swing, so it wasn't all together.
Yeah, that's something we since we don't have a wheelchair accessible swing, we're gonna need to look at the ASTM standards on that, because almost everyone we've seen has been, unless James, right off the bat, have been fenced off, and the only thing we can assume is that the traditional playgrounds got kids running everywhere, running through it, and so those wheelchair swings are heavy, especially when you add a wheelchair, and depending on how high they swing, could easily hit a child that was running through the middle of it. It's probably why they fence it off. We just don't know if you're required to. If you're not required to, then we could probably do some things design-wise to kind of prevent kids, this be the pathway that kids run through the middle of it and not feel like, oh, this is the section for kids in a wheelchair to go on and swing.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I think that's the one thing also as you get older kids who it's not as easy to transfer into a little thing, is that they want to feel inclusive, and their adult bodies may be adult, but they still want to play too, and it's harder because they are either far away or they can't do it because physically it's just not easy to lift a teenage kid into something like that. So I think some of the things that I really loved seeing was that sway play, because you can roll right in, and it's like, I don't think kids are like, oh, this park is for the wheelchair kids. This is like, everyone's playing on it, but a wheelchair can easily go in there without having to be lifted up and things like that. So I think if we're talking about at least the special needs community part, I would like to see more of that aspect of just kind of being more inclusive, like,
Side by side.
Yeah.
right, side by side, and I'm really not, this part is for this and this part's for that, and just easier for, if we're trying to say we are an inclusive playground, for all abilities, I would like to see more of that, as well as my child is nonverbal, so and I don't know if you guys know what a PEC system is, but it's like
I'm on it.
right there.
That's what I brought. This is my contribution to the
Like
ideas.
Yeah, a PEC system where it's got little pictures, really easy pictures to look at, and they can say, oh, I wanna do slide, I wanna play this, I wanna do this, and you know, they kind of point. And it also helps other kids talk to them too, because it's not just me as a parent saying, oh, he wants to go to the slide. It's, he's talking to other kids and doing that too, cause my kid is 9, but every time I go to the park, everyone's like, oh, hey, Evan, hi, Evan. I don't even know who they are, but they're, you know, but he's like playing around with them, and to kind of make that an easier way to say, hey, you know, like, what do y'all wanna do? And he can, you know, I don't know, it doesn't have to be this big huge system all the way around, but I mean, just to see things like that makes it feel more inclusive for everybody.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it's one thing to take away the barriers and make it accessible, but again, if you say, all right, wheelchairs and a swing have to go over here, that's not being
In a
inclusive.
sense,
It's accessible, yes. So a child in a wheelchair can go swing over there, but if they feel like they're all by themselves and they're being banned to this area of the park, that is not inclusive at all, so, yeah.
So I brought information on the communication board, and so some people, you might have seen this because there's a speech therapist in the Metroplex that designed this, and they actually just installed this about a month or so ago in the Rowlett Park, and I actually connected her with Lauren Prisville at Fox 4, and so Lauren did a little, she did a story on it too, but anyway, so it's kids can, like she was saying, they point to the symbols and it's got some like core vocabulary for the park, different activities, and they can, you know, express what they want to do, and so I brought the information for the company that they just used in
great,
Rowlett,
yeah.
so I'll hand this off to you, but
Okay, great.
I posted this on the Facebook thing too, and I think it kind of got a positive response from the parents that had commented on Facebook too, so
Good.
I think it'd be valuable.
That's great.
And it's not that expensive, it's less than $2,000.
Where is that channel located, play space, is it on the exterior, or closer to the center where the kids are playing, or is that something that is part of the?
You can do it either way, like, and the thing too is there's a code on there, like QR code that you can scan, so you might bring your iPad or your phone, and then the kid doesn't necessarily have to go back to that board every time, it's now on their device, and so then they can point on their tablet or phone or whatever, communicate that way.
Yes.
Okay, one thing I noticed, walking through the park by the soccer fields, and it didn't affect us because we were walking, but the runners and the bicyclists that are going through there, the soccer balls are going across there and hitting it. And if I was riding a bike and it hit right or something, it could cause a problem, and then some of the joggers were like jumping them. So,
Yeah.
while they're running through. So is there a reason why there's not a net there or anything to stop the soccer balls from going across the path?
Probably not, other than it's a practice space and not a game, so it wasn't, you know, we have them here on this side because of the road to prevent people from getting out, but I'm not sure why.
They were, there
It's
were
the other
fences,
side.
there were
Yeah.
fences down that area, and everything washed.
The flood takes care
Yeah.
of those fences.
Yeah, that's the problem with this side, so you can see it's in the floodway, so there, from what James is saying, there were fences there and they got washed away, so,
I'm
that's,
not talking about 1 or 2 soccer balls, I mean, they were
yeah.
really busy.
With this concept, the soccer would move over there, so that would be resolved, but.
Yeah, they're way over there.
But it's a good, good point.
So that would be good.
Conflict of users, yeah.
I think one question I have is about the restrooms, and as far as, you know, like, and I don't know if y'all have a child in a wheelchair, like, could you provide feedback on what you need in a restroom to make it easier to change your child in there?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's something I've heard from parents too.
Yeah, I mean, my daughter's able to transfer and use the restroom, but a lot of wheelchair families need like a table or something that they could change on and not have to change them on the floor.
And not just, something that'll accommodate, like, bigger than just your typical baby
Yeah.
changing table. That's
One of our-
The bench. Exactly.
Relative to that, are the sizes of the restrooms that y'all seen, are the turning spaces or areas adequate, or do they need to be able to
So I
what are
think-
your thoughts?
Well, I think what I've seen that I thought was good, and I think Ann might have said it, but it's, you know, the guy's bathroom, the girl's bathroom, and then a family bathroom that's much bigger, that you could have, hey, this is the space for, and, you know, kinda like as big as like a massage table kind of thing. And I think that would kind of solve what you were saying is like, well, there's no space to put a big, huge, you know, massage table in like a handicap bathroom, you know, but it
you're doing it like this is a family bathroom, it's also wheelchair accessible and all that stuff. That's what I think we would have.
Have y'all seen anything relative to that in some of the facilities that y'all visit?
We didn't use the restroom, we should.
But that's the thing too, is like dads take their kids to the parks too, so we can't just put it in the women's
Right,
restroom.
yeah,
Yeah.
a family.
Yeah.
One of the challenges at Chandler Park, within the first 6 months, I think we replaced the baby changing stations 5 times. Kids just tear them up, and we can't put cameras in the bathroom. you
Yeah.
know?
Right.
So we can't catch them, we have them in the park, but we can't catch them doing the things, and they would put Skittles in the urinals and light them on fire with, firecrackers and, yeah, all kinds of crazy things. And so we had talked about, and we kept replacing them, but we said it'd be better if we just had more of a bench or a table that was permanent. But the problem is the restroom wasn't designed that way, so by doing that, it impeded the accessibility and the turning radiuses. But we're gonna plan a new one, so design it in according to that. Make sure it has enough space, as James was talking about, so that if you had a permanent table in there that would meet those needs, you wouldn't have the opportunity for vandalism, for people ripping them off the wall, and you would meet those needs and then still have adequate room for assistive devices to get in and out. The only challenge with the family restrooms in the park is in the boys' restroom, boys and men can go in there. In the girls' restroom, girls and women can go in there. In a family station, everybody can go in there. So what we typically see in public parks is teenage boys and girls
Oh
go in
no.
there and lock the doors.
Oh no.
Yeah,
And with a large.
yeah.
You
So
guys have seen a lot in
With the red
here.
border.
yeah. So, but it is well noted, and so we'll see if we can figure something out there. Yeah. So, but that is part of what comes with it. So. But the more active and more used a park is, the less that kind of stuff happens. But so what typically happens, all the kids go home and go play in, and then late night teens come in there. We would just have to make sure first thing in the morning we're cleaning up any debris that's maybe left in there. Other thoughts, comments, questions?
Yeah, I'm sure.
People don't always use parks the way they're intended.
I do, what you were asking, Sarah, about a theme, I like the idea of a theme, like, I don't have a particular theme, but I do like the idea of a theme because it does feel like, this is, especially what you're saying, like some really cool, fun things,
Mhm.
like, oh wow, this would be, and
I was thinking rose too, but it's like, I didn't even think about thorns.
Themes don't go out, like if you put modern, it's gonna go out of style. Just like when you remodel your bathroom modern and or whatever, and then 5 years later, it's like not good.
If they're saying 15 years, I
Yeah, well,
like a
I
modern
mean,
one would be 15
I'm
or
thinking
something.
themes are whimsical are not gonna go out of style. And we're spending a lot of money, right?
Mhm.
Do we want to go out of style?
No. One other point too, our Mansfield Commission for the Arts and our city staff are working on a cultural arts master plan, the first one for the city right now. And the preliminary feedback from their meetings and survey already, I appreciate it, is that trails and parks are one of the things that are coming out. People keep talking about that. And so they want art in the parks. They want, whether it's programs, events, or actual structures. And so, and Chris is on that committee that's serving on that. And so through that process and this project, we're probably gonna have, art will be a component of this. So the playful art. So, the structures themselves. And so the theme might come out of that as a process as well. So the consultant just gave an update a couple weeks ago to the city council. So it just bled through a theme of Parks and Rec. So we love that. So if there's a way to mesh those together and make it, whether it is a play structure, but it's considered art for the public, maybe we check a couple boxes that way.
Okay, you're gonna love me for this one. Right now, I've noticed that kids were going down into the dry creeks and Walnut Creek and stuff, and we've got tires down there that are exposed, and we've got metal and stuff that's sharp that's exposed down there, and our kids don't care, they're down there playing that. And it is a great opportunity right now to pull that stuff out of there, cause it's like nothing, no water's there, and most of the time there's water there and we can't even see it.
Yeah.
Don't you love me?
Is there a particular area? We can maybe see if we can get a volunteer project.
And I was looking at all the sharp metal and all the stuff.
along the
And-
trail.
Yeah, and I know that y'all,
In the creek.
I read your minutes and you leave the trees that fall and stuff down. There's also some limbs that are what I call widow makers that are over the path that are broken off, that if they come down, they're gonna, if someone's under there, it's gonna be bad.
Yeah, and you do identify those, and you can get rid of those.
Well, I found something.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned it tennis courts to make those, like where we could host some wheelchair tennis events or anything like that. I know Walnut Creek used to do a big wheelchair tennis event, and I think their courts have deteriorated so much, they really can't.
Yeah, we actually have had some discussions with the country club themselves about trying to partner on improving tennis courts throughout the city, including theirs. So that's a good point, trying to incorporate, because I don't even know if they have any 10 and under courts as a part of that. So different programming opportunities. So that's a good point. Again, we only have 3 public courts, so we have a lot more. So we might as well make sure we design it and program it for flexibility. So.
Now, at the court, they do have some of the 10 under lines painted on the existing courts. There's several that have that, but undesignated.
Do you wanna know how I noticed that? I was standing at the edge of it and I was
Since we
throwing
have 3
the
already
and all of
going
a
to
sudden,
be,
I
you
hit
know, by
that
next
part
year, because they're already in
and
construction.
I-
Here we have 3 splash pads.
Yeah.
Is splash pad a huge, like, need for Rose?
So aquatics and splash pads are right up there with playgrounds and trails when it comes to, every time we ask for public input, trails are always number 1, no matter what city, you're always gonna get it there. But aquatics are right there behind it. And so even with the bond program here recently, when people said, I don't want that, I want aquatics of some kind. Some of them are swimming pools. I just saw today, what city was it? Is it Fort Worth? I think Fort Worth has taken out 3 of their pools and replacing them with splash pads. That's just kind of the way, because you don't have to staff them, they're free, you don't have to worry about water and drowning and those kind of things. And you can operate it longer than just the 3 months. Again, in today's world, staffing is the problem for everybody, lifeguards. So Arlington, just about every week is closing pools because they don't have enough staff to operate them. But, so originally our master plan identified the need to have a splash pad in all 4 quadrants. So we'll get there 75% of the way with this one. And then we really need one kind of in the southeast quadrant. The only idea that came out of this is just the family experience, that it would be another layer to add to it. It would probably be one of the last components on this proposed concept to happen. So it may never happen, but we at least wanted to plan for the space in case we wanted to do that. It could be an expanded playground, it could be another feature to that. So I think from the first meeting, I think a lot of people like the idea, but it's definitely not gonna happen in phase 1. It's not part of that money. It's playground and basic park improvements to make that to support the playground. Any of the other amenities, tennis courts and those things are gonna have to come from a follow-up funding source as we go forward with priorities.
So yeah, I think you answered my question. So the pool then is not really, something that we really are gonna try to put in the near future.
In Rose? No.
Anywhere.
Oh.
Mansfield.
Just like a regular pool?
Like a pool that people can rent out.
Public
So-
pool?
No?
No.
Okay. It's so hot right now, everybody
Yeah.
wants to go swim.
I mean, of course, Hawaiian Falls is our park.
Yeah.
Hawaiian Falls is our park. It's just operated by a third party. The council, we had an update from the bond program, and it was bad timing with inflation and gas prices, and then 3 weeks before the everybody's taxes come out, and so things that may change. Council is still committed to try to get that combination rec center library that would have the indoor aquatic piece, and so it's just all priorities at this point. We can't move as fast, but that's still at the top of their list. So that's probably the best candidate for getting a pool, another city-run pool in the near future. But unfortunately, it's on the side burner. It's not back burner. That's why I keep telling staff it's on the side burner. It's still there. It's still got heat. It's not on the back burner. It's a big ticket too. So yes.
What about negotiating with the water park to give us deals for the Mansfield residents to get deals to go to their water park? That's right down there.
It's our park. It's not theirs. It's ours.
It's yours?
Yeah, it's a city. That's a city facility. We just don't operate it. We lease out the operation. So Mansfield residents do get a discount.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's still for your families that need access to a public pool, it's not in their price range.
Yeah. It is a regional water park. It's not a Six Flags Hurricane Harbor, but it's a regional water park. It's not Randall Mill in Arlington or Bad Kunashoven in Southeast Arlington,
Right.
which still aren't. They're not the old school. I mean, they're
So
still.
what, it's about $100?
I know, for
or-
my family of 4, it was before we had passes, it was $85, $90. That was
each person?
No total,
Oh,
which
that's
for,
not bad at all.
but for, to just go swim for a day,
Is that, but that's, you can't get, season passes? Can't
Yeah,
we-
season passes are, I think,
65 is
60.
the lowest.
For season passes? That is, I don't know, it's just, I guess, for low, are you talking about for low?
I'm talking low income families,
Okay,
it's
yeah.
just not really feasible for our low income families.
Okay,
Which when you look at like how our school demographics and everything are changing and becoming more, you know, we have more and more Title I schools, it's just not feasible, but.
Yeah, with the,
And that's the advantage of kids learning to swim, which is a,
yeah.
are there any
Important
grant
life skill.
programs or, in section 8 or anything that we've looked into that would supplement that?
I'm not sure. Again, with our agreement with the third party, with the proposed rec center library that was gonna have indoor aquatics, and Jessica was on our advisory committee, for that. You know, we had it was a concept, so it wasn't designed, so we don't know, but the feedback we had a proposed, indoor water park to it. And so we had to come up with a pro forma and basic cost estimates, but part of that plan was that there would be financial assistance for residents as a part of that. So, because we would intend to run that ourselves, so we could control that point better. That when you lease it out to a third party, obviously they
Right.
gotta make money, so there's only so
Yeah.
much they can do. They do provide Mansfield residents discounted passes. They do give us some free passes from time to
I'm
time
just
to,
thinking it's
give out.
already
But,
built, and I do know that it's high, maintenance and high cost to have a public pool.
yeah,
Liability insurance and all that goes into that, and it's huge cost for what you're gonna get versus putting the money into playgrounds and other things that are safer, that don't have to be maintained like that, and that water park's already built. So if we could get something where they could be more affordable to people that were low income, to go to that water park, work something out, that would be the best solution, instead of building another swimming pool. That's way better than just one swimming pool.
Sure.
And Burleson has trouble staffing their swimming pool, like you said, and they spend a ton of money on that pool, maintaining it, that they have over there in Burleson. So, I'm just thinking that's the more logical solution. If you
Make it
could
more
get some.
affordable to.
Yeah,
Affordable.
yeah, make it more affordable where they can go use it, it's already built. They, where they can go to it.
That would be nice.
It can be done. It's just, you have to think about it, then you have to find the people that can have the power to do it, and then you have to get it approved. It's easy.
Yeah,
Easy.
just let her hand it up, guys. She's gonna make this happen.
Okay, so we want you to put your dots, pick your amenities, give us your ideas on any themes. If you have any other random comments about anything, just take a post-it note. You can stick it on the boards themselves or just on the general
Well,
board.
No one's gonna hate a Disney thing. That's a good thing. Any Disney things, I think you're safe. Now, you better be careful on the things you pick.
Yeah.
Are they
That's all I
different
gotta say
colors?
about that.
So
For
what is the
different-
blue dot for?
Yeah.
Yes, the
The-
blue dot is for the theme.
Yep.
So
Okay.
that goes over there. And then you get a little bit closer look at the master plan if you'd like to see that up in close. And then the red dots go over here for the different
Okay.
amenities that you
Okay.
like. And then if there's, I wrote down some of the things that you guys said, but if there's others, definitely let us know and,
We're not gonna.
I do love
Yeah.
that big tower, climbing tower.
it was
That's-
amazing last meeting, that's what all the
Oh,
kids
yeah?
wanted. They wanted to
Yeah.
play, but,
Yeah, we had a pretty good group of kids in that first one. Yeah, they were all migrated to that. So.
When we went to the grand one, I was like, where do you wanna play? He was like,
Yeah.
I was like,
It's just the tricky part when parents are like, get.
Oh,
let it go."
I know what happened.
Yeah.
So there's two. There was one that was like the big, like the blocks on top of each other, and never could do that.
Yeah.
But then there was a rope tower that was up there, and I had to keep it on.
You didn't come in our machines, we're taking
Oh, I was like, what are you doing?
Of course, so we'll kind of keep that in mind too, parents have to get up there, how fun is that gonna be?
Right, yeah. Okay, red ones go here, blue
Yes,
ones
blue
go
ones
there.
over there,
Yep.
themes over there,
Yep.
comments, I think it said PEG system, or is it
Heck.
PEG? So,
really
You gave
core
it.
board.
Okay,
Core vocabulary.
okay, sounds good.
Communication board.
Yep, I heard PEG and I was like, that really didn't sound right.
Who got that? Did Andrew?
I grabbed it, yeah, so
Oh.
I have it.
And I have, she even sent me, like, when I contacted them, like, hand out, whatever, she even sent me, like, quotes, like, forward on, if you have an email address, I can forward you the emails that I got from them, if you have a card, would be
Yeah,
great.
yeah, definitely. And then we work with, Arizona Times, I think that they can easily replicate something like that. So we can look at both options and see what, yeah, but I love that idea. And especially that they can give it on their tablet too.
Yeah.
And that's just so much, that's their security and being able to communicate.
For sure.
So thank you for that idea.
Awesome.